Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford and Rory O'Neill with you. To back on the Allianz Football League final weekend. We've been joined by Mick Foley of the Sunday Times and by Ciaran Whelan. Whelo, how are you getting on? The Dubs are back.
Back, Division 2 title in the bag. I'm telling you.
The joy on the faces, the joy.
The Monday club is only rounding up now. They'd be off by Wednesday, Mikey, you know.
Can I read out a quote from Desi Farrell, which really did make me chuckle this morning. I think for us, it was about the opportunity to play another really competitive game, because with all due respect to Division 2 and some of the teams, you know, you just don't know what you're getting. When you're looking at what's happening in Division 1, it seems to be highly competitive, and that's always the risk when you find yourself in Division 2 like we did this year. He was being polite, he was being mannerly, but now that he's out of it, he's letting them all know what he really thinks.
He didn't say that at the start of the league either, did he?
No, he didn't.
We're leaving them behind us now.
We're out of this one-horse town. Later, losers.
He's going to get some land when he goes into the Leinster Championship. So
it's all milk and honey from here, Mick. And let's all spare a thought for the Mayo players who added a rare national title and got to celebrate with a bottle of Club Energize and took it in turns foam rolling up and down the aisle of the bus on the way home to Mayo. But Kevin McStay, he seemed genuinely chuffed, Mick. You know, we had him on. You were on with us enough times last year with Kevin. I think we all were happy he got the job. He looked as genuinely pleased as someone can look winning an Allianz League title, I think.
and
not being able to celebrate it.
And not being able to celebrate it, yeah. Like, I mean, I think he made the point at the press conference afterwards, you know. It felt like it was bursting out of him ready to go, and he said he'd be leading the charge, like, if they could celebrate type thing, you know. But I think actually what Kevin McStay has done throughout the league, if you look at him after games and even in his handshakes with most managers and stuff like that, you know, he's whether he is or not, he's giving the impression of a man who wants to be seen to be enjoying it, and that this isn't a burden. What we're doing here is not a burden, and we're winning matches and we're drawing games and we're getting to finals and we're in a league final a week before a championship match, but it's not a burden.
It's you know what I mean?
So I think there's a bit of conscious sort of just projection here that, you know, Mayo have this kind of notion of a tortured history. These are boom times for Mayo. We should be loving this. And, you know, one big game after another. Wouldn't it be worse if we didn't have the big games one after another and off we go? At least that's the impression he wants to give. We're going to enjoy every win. We're going to enjoy it out. We're going to take it step by step and see where we go.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting, Mike, even though Aidan O'Shea, I think, touched on it in his post-match interview. You know, he said, we never set out to win the league. And I don't think it was ever their intention, I think, to win the league. I think from the start it was the intention to get safe and get a performance and build momentum. But like, they're full of confidence now, and they're, you know, you can't beat that. And I think you're right, Mick, that Kevin has been very honest as a manager, I think, since he's gone in there. He's very forthright and honest in his views. Now, it's great being honest and like Jurgen Klopp when you're winning. It's when the defeats come, that's when the real test of mettle comes. But like, I'm sure deep down, as a management team, they are absolutely delighted, because they've essentially really built a new team when you think about it. You know, a whole new full back line, you know, really yesterday. Callan and Dunwell,
new goalkeeper, new back four.
Yeah, new back four. Dave McBride has been very good. They put Conor Glass in at 6. You know, so he's really rebuilt a team throughout the league, and now has 15 probably, and great competition for starting. I think Tommy Conroy has to start, in my view. I think he's going to break into the first 15. I think he will. I think he gives them another dynamic up front. But like, massive credit that they've a brand new team, full of confidence, full of momentum, and winning a national title in Croke Park, a place that's been horrible for them in the past. Now, listen, they've been there from a league perspective before, but yeah, You can't beat momentum and confidence, and I'm sure it's a good group to be around at the moment.
Like, they're at the point now, if you think about the tail end of the James Horan era, not even the tail end, but say the second coming of Horan, and the idea that he had, which was to develop this squad of, like, if they didn't have the superstars like Kerry may have or Dublin have, they were going to develop a squad of 8 out of 10ers, you know, a really good high level quality across the board that create a competition. And Horan nearly got there, but McStay has kind of stepped on top of that now, and they have developed. I would say, they probably don't have that star quality, if you want to put it that way, that Kerry Dublin have. But as squads go, they're probably, I would say, they're the best pound for pound in the country right now as a result of what's been done. They have achieved what Horan would have set out to do in his second stint, which was to redevelop the team to the level that they have 20 plus now, that whoever comes in, you're going, yeah, they'll be okay. They'll be all right, like, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder, was he aided in that, Mick, by, say, Lee Keegan, who was probably their superstar for the last decade, Oisin Mullen, who was maybe seen as the next great hope, and then, you know, kind of leaving, Cillian O'Connor being injured. So maybe the 3 guys outside of Aidan O'Shea, who perhaps is always happier to be a bit more of a workhorse, that they're gone, and then it made it a bit more of an equitable society.
Well, you know, and this isn't being disrespectful to anybody, right? But I always felt that, you know, the reaction to Lee Keegan's retirement was a little bit panicky, let's say. I thought Oisin Mullen was...
Rory's still waiting for him to come back.
Yeah, you may well do. Anything's possible after last weekend, or the weekend before last, to go back.
Look at Ciaran McFall falling back in with Derry.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, you just don't know what's coming down the track. But, like, you know, for Lee Keegan leaving, the all-time great that he truly is, there was at least 3 young lads in that Mayo panel going, nice one. You know? It's my chance now. I mean, you got to think of these are lads in their early 20s. They don't care, like. You know, they're not thinking about legacy or anybody else's legacy. They're only thinking about, I'm here and I want to get my game. I'm good enough to play. I know there's one less guy here. I'm going to go for it. Oisin Mullen was probably the one that leapt out in terms of, you wouldn't want to have lost him, like, in an ideal world. But at the same time, as I said, they've been evolving this squad now for a while. And you mentioned Tommy Conroy starting there. I mean, last year I was looking at it going, there's going to be a point somewhere in time next year where you're going to have Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, and Cillian O'Connor all in the one line. And I'm feeling quite good about that from a Mayo perspective. But now you're looking at Cillian and you're looking at James Carr, and you're going, well, there's competition there. There's other lads as well that come into the mix.
And Aidan O'Shea has probably been player of the week.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this was a long-held Kevin McStay theory that Aidan O'Shea needed to be inside. Now, if you look at some of the work he did yesterday, some of his work wasn't all done inside, like. So he did drift out, yeah. He did, yeah, and he did good work. But again, in the heat of championship, when it comes to it, there'll be specific jobs for Aidan O'Shea to do, and he's proven now that he's in a good space. You could see him at the end, kind of, you know, gritting the teeth, and I don't know if he banged the ground or he fist pumped, but either way, anyway, he was happy to win a league title. And the mood is good, the vibe is good. As I say, I think the squad is the strongest in the country. They may not have the sprinkling of star power that some of the other teams have, but they certainly have all the tools to go a long way now.
Cillian O'Connor's an interesting one, I think, Ciaran, because if for nothing else, he gives you a lot of security on frees that Ryan O'Donoghue's been very, very good, but he might miss the odd one, whereas Cillian O'Connor, as we all know, is the top scorer in championship history because he basically doesn't miss frees, except maybe the odd one in the very, very closing stages of an All-Ireland final, but we won't go into that.
Yeah, but I suppose that they'll probably stick with Ryan O'Donoghue, I think, to be fair. I'm not too sure.
For his confidence, as much as anything?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think Cillian O'Connor is going to be a starter, you know. I can see Conroy pushing to come back in, you know. James Carr I think he scored something like 2-7, 2-8 from playing the league. He's been brilliant as well. So I can see Cillian O'Connor being someone coming in 15, 20 minutes when you need that bit of cuteness, you need that bit of smartness that he has, and bringing that bit of leadership to the forward line. So I think that they'll stick with Ryan O'Donoghue. I think if you were to be critical of Mayo yesterday, you know, that maybe, you know, the first 16 minutes, you know, they went 6-1 up and were excellent. Unlike Galway, really turning over the goal. Galway, a lot of turnovers in that first 16 minutes, and they're usually smarter in possession. Galway, they don't usually carry the ball into the tackle, and Mayo hurt them, allowed them to execute that kicking game. And when Mayo, I think the one thing for me, Mayo during the league, is they move the ball extremely quick, whether it's by hand, whether it's by foot, whether it's 20 yards, 30 yards, they move it extremely quick. And they got at Galway in that first 16 minutes. Now, after that 16 minutes, and probably the injury, maybe that was the break in play that nearly kind of maybe, I don't know, it took away some of their momentum. You know, Galway fairly much shut them down. And while they show great character in the second half to hang in there, you know, they will come away and they'll think, yeah, I think 10 place balls, 9 frees, you know, and some of the frees were soft enough, a little bit questionable. So that when they look back at the game in the cold light of day, while they showed brilliant character to get over the line and they stayed ahead and they finished strong, and there was loads of positives for Mayo to take, they will look at the goal chances Galway missed, where the Galway at their full, you know, their forward line didn't really perform. So there'll be aspects of the game that they'll like. I came away from the game thinking, yeah, Mayo probably deserved it on the day, but if these two teams were playing again next week, you know, it's a flip of a coin. So Galway are not far behind them at all.
Or if these two teams were playing in 2 weeks,
3 weeks, 3 weeks.
Rory, he was probably rightly man of the match. Colin Reap, there was 4 saves, 2 of them were really, really top notch, and he scored 3 points. I just totted it up. There were 11 points from goalkeepers across the weekend in Croke Park.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Reap added 3 of those, so it was a fantastic performance from him. He's definitely, that's his jersey now anyway. There's no doubt about that.
No, absolutely, and he was justifiably man of the match. Now you could argue the toss on whether or not he may have
been on the pitch.
Should have, like, I don't know. I think it's a really difficult one for a referee in that scenario. Like, he was committed to it. Do you have a duty of care to your opponent in that situation? To a certain extent, maybe you do. And in that context, I was kind of, do you remember, for the older listeners and viewers, do you remember Michael Schumacher, or not Michael Schumacher, Tony Schumacher in the 82 World Cup?
Rory, that was reckless.
this was I know it was reckless. You know, but like I think the big thing from a Galway perspective was it definitely shook Johnny Heaney, and given how important, I think that was one of the big takeaways across the weekend for me, was the body count. I mean, if you look, I think Conor Glass tweaking a hamstring, you had Dean Rock going off with a potential ankle injury. They had the boot off and the sock off really, really quickly, and he limped off. An important player for Dublin, because free taking, as we know, is so key now. And Con had to go on to them afterwards, and he wouldn't necessarily be a free taker. Would he, Whelo? Con O'Callaghan wouldn't be his forte. So you had, you know, and then obviously Johnny Heaney. Mayo look luckily enough not to have picked up any. But I thought to go back to the point, sorry, Mikey, both goalkeepers I thought played really well. In fairness to Conor Gleeson, a guy that might have shipped quite a bit of criticism, I thought he was good under dropping ball. His kickouts were good. And how brave was he for that shot that smacked him straight into the face? I mean, and
knocked his hat off.
Yeah, that was a ferocious belt of football. I mean, I thought both goalkeepers were top class, but Reap was definitely the star man. But loads of positives for both teams to take. And I was just reading him in Fitzmaurice this morning, and he makes the not unreasonable point about familiarity breeding contempt. That would be the big worry with these two now. They start meeting each other a lot more regularly. He said it reminds him of the Cork-Kerry Naughties relationship, where, you know, it started off with mutual respect and it then degenerated quite quickly after that. And
mutual disrespect.
Yeah. Yeah, and lots of it. So the next time these two meet, don't be surprised if, in case of emergency, break glass and Mr. Goff is sent out to adjudicate proceedings.
Yeah, fair enough. On Galway then, Whelo, like, they're off to Portugal now for a training camp, and they know there's a good chance in 3 weeks we're going to be playing this team again, or they'll be playing Roscommon. Either way, Pádraig Joyce has to be pretty satisfied that he's seen Mayo's championship, like, people talk about their hand, like, not going to change the way they play, but he's seen Mayo at full tilt now, pretty much. Probably the 15 that Kevin McStay will hope to play against them in 3 weeks' time if they beat Roscommon. He has 3 weeks to toy around here, and we had Shane McGrath on the podcast a couple of weeks ago just explaining exactly how much work can be done at a warm weather training camp, like just the sheer volume of both physical work, pitch work, you know, tactical work, just like bonding. So Galway, Will they fit in a challenge game before they play the winners of Mayo and Roscommon? And just Galway have room to evolve. Obviously, Mayo will get better with wins, but like Galway are going to get better, aren't they?
Listen, it's one of the massive flaws that will come out, the end of the year, in terms of, and I think it's beginning to. You see the likes of Andy Moran talking about it last week, and the pressure that's been put on players mentally and physically week in, week out. And the compact season and the championship on top. Like, you look, Kerry and I think Dublin, possibly, and Galway all heading away for a week's preparation, while the guys in Ulster have to knock the shit out of each other over the next few weeks. Galway, Mayo have to play Roscommon next week. Other teams are battling to try to get into the Sam Maguire. So there is an imbalance there. There's no doubt about it. But I think Galway, as I said, they look back on yesterday and they'll reflect up front and think, that there's certainly improvements that they can make. There was that first 16 minutes they were hugely disappointed with carrying the ball into the tackle. They've key players still to come back. Comer will get fitter. They didn't really use him yesterday. They didn't kick much ball into him. He got that one chance when he got in. You saw how dangerous he can be. They've Killing McDade to come back into the middle. They have found a bit of depth throughout the league. And if to be critical of them yesterday, maybe they giving up the kick out to Mayo was probably, I would have thought, when they were behind and chasing the game, that they might have seen them in the past push up a little bit more and try and squeeze them. They never really done that, and by handing the possession to Mayo off their kick out, it allowed Mayo build and get up the field and get those scores. So there'll be aspects of the game that I want to improve, but Mikey, I see Galway as All-Ireland contenders. I really do. I've said that kind of the last few weeks. As much as Mayo are building, and there is something special building, these two teams, with the best two teams, form teams in the country in the league final yesterday, I haven't changed that view. And they're probably in the ideal situation now. They have 3 weeks, they have a week to kind of come down. They'll get plenty of video analysis done. They'll get a bit of work done away. Probably come home and have either a game next weekend or a Series A versus B game, and then they'd be building for that next round. And we also got to remember, going into yesterday's game, Galway had a tough enough game against Kerry the previous week, where Mayo had made 10 changes. So just little things, little things that can make a difference. So Galway will be in good shape 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, Mick, that's the thing. Like, like a lot of neutrals, I'm romantically would love to see Mayo get their All-Ireland, get the monkey off their back. But like, there's no, like, I don't think the hype's getting silly, but you do hear little things, like, and obviously it's a title, and that's great. We have a title, and we'll build on this. The next title we want is, and all roads lead to Sam, etc. But like, this is just one outing with two teams who are, as Whelo very plainly sets out, kind of still on slightly different cycles. Galway were the team who were in All-Ireland final last year. I didn't see a whole lot yesterday that made me think that Mayo have overturned this hugely, and that the championship meeting between them would be like Mayo would be raging favourites, and this Galway team are still very good despite yesterday's defeat.
No question about it. I mean, it's in the history of Gaelic football, it's a very boring thing to say, but Galway Mayo is the most inscrutable rivalry of them all. It tends to go back and forth, bar the odd big long stretch here and there, but not too many of those either. But like, it's back in that kind of pendulum bit at the minute. I mean, starting out the season, I was looking at it like the first game in the league between Galway and Mayo. It struck me that whenever Galway and Mayo played this year, it's going to be enormously relevant for the rest of the championship and the rest of the season. So first game in the league was Galway Mayo. That was very relevant for the whole league. It was very relevant for Kevin McStay, and obviously Galway wanting to make sure, Mayo's targets now, like when you think about it, okay, we're talking about them as, and they are All-Ireland contenders, I think, but their immediate target is to make sure they stay ahead of Galway. Because if they stay ahead of Galway, they're definitely All-Ireland contenders, right? So win your first league match. Okay, league final comes up. You don't expect that, you take that on. But I think if they do meet in Connacht, that's enormous for the entire rest of the championship. And I would expect if you followed the form lines, I would expect that Galway and Mayo will be the last four. So, they're going to have an enormous say, I would say, in it. And Galway, I mean, coming into the league, the natural kind of thing was, well, looking at their squad last year, the All-Ireland final, depth, etc., etc. They've dug it out, they've dug the bit of depth now in there. So they're good to go. And you mentioned there just the attrition rate you're going to have. Who knows what Mayo are going to look like after a weekend against Roscommon? I mean, that's going to be ferocious. And Mayo Galway will be ferocious as well. So again, you just don't know how teams are going to look in a couple of more weeks' time, 3 weeks' time.
Is New York are going to have a handy win in the Connacht final against whoever they play then, aren't they?
Well, like Ciaran's point about Galway going away and coming back fresh, it does go on those swings and roundabouts in a tight season like this. Mayo have a rest, they're a little bit, maybe that gives a little advantage. Galway, I think, will definitely have the advantage in the championship game. Just looking at it from here at the moment, we don't know how, obviously, whether it's Mayo or Roscommon, but you would feel that Galway will be in a bit better shape because the work they have to do is not deep stuff. Like, it's just tweaking and it's getting fellas up to a speed and getting a bit more precision into their play here and there. And even that in itself will be an evolving thing. There's a long old season ahead yet for them, short but long.
The other thing there, Mick, that when you look at the context of the new season, can a team really go for everything? Can you go for everything? You got to remember now when you come out of your provincial championships, you have 6-7 games to win in All Ireland. What's Mayo's goal at the end of the year is to win in All Ireland or be there and be contending in the last 3 or 4. I think we're putting a little bit too much weight on the provincial championships, and I think next week is the beginning and the end for them. Because if you take Mayo playing Galway, if they get over Roscommon, or even if they don't, a loss in the provincial championship, while it might be disappointed with the performance, it might just suit some teams. Mayo could get that if they were to lose. You get that few week window to build for the group system again. Okay, you lose your seeding. There's a downside to it. I don't know whether every teams can go for everything given the season. You're going to pick up a bit of attrition, so a little bit of a breather for teams to regroup won't be the end of the world. And I think when we get to the end of the season, there'll be a lot of reflection done in terms of the flow of the season and how it suited certain teams.
Yeah, I think
sorry, Rory, just on that point, I think the GA know exactly what they're doing here, and they have known for quite some number of years, in terms of this is the beginning of the gradual pulling of the rug from underneath the provincial championships feet. You're absolutely right. It's only now.
Do you honestly think that that'll happen quickly, though, Mick? I mean, look, I think it's a very fair point that the provincial championships will be the collateral damage that everyone wants in a condensed calendar.
Except Ulster.
But if you look at the
I disagree. Yeah,
but if that'll go to,
I know it'll go, but they don't want it to go. Is what I'm saying. Of course it'll go.
I don't know about that. Changing. I think
but if you look at the history of change within the GA, and I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to the notion that change happens too slowly. I think sometimes the GA can be quite radical when it wants to be and move very
well. It happens quick in the end, Rory, as we always say.
Yeah. But the only thing for me is, if you take, for instance, let's say, look at major fundamental change, the qualifiers. They came in, right? That's grand. No, that's the qualifiers. They stayed for 20 years, even though they might have been, past their fit for purpose sell-by date after 10, 12 of those, and went on for maybe another 7 or 8. Like the black card, that came in. Oh, that's fine now. That's grand. We'll just leave it at that. I don't know if we all have our views about the provincial championships and that they will eventually go. I'm not so sure if they'll go.
They mightn't go, but they might be moved to a different part of the year. They might be sidelined.
What'll happen? What I would envisage, I suppose when I say the pulling of the rug, I'm not talking about next year or 2025. Yeah. I agree with you. It's down track. But what you'll find is people, like teams and managers and players, are still trying to figure out this season in terms of, when do we have to be up? When can we, do the load, work building, blah, blah, all that, right? So when that figures itself out, the upshot will be exactly what Ciaran said. You can't go for everything, especially as an elite team. The one thing that will possibly keep it going this year, is that you have Galway, Roscommon and Mayo on the one side of Connacht. Like, Mayo won't want to lose to Roscommon. They really won't. And neither of them will want to lose to Galway. So that'll add its own thing. But absolutely.
Could I ask you this though? So I ask you all this, right? If, and I'd have a small, you're a famous You've always famously said, Mick, which I think is a great one, in one of these years when it's a really open championship and anyone could win it. Who usually wins it, Mick?
Kerry.
Kerry.
Right. If in doubt, lads, right. It's a design for life. It's a design for life. If you take nothing else away from today, in general, if in doubt, Kerry.
Kerry, right? Now, if we end up in a situation, which I think is eminently possible, and I know we're, trying to predict the future, but if we end up in a situation where Kerry and Dublin end up in the All-Ireland final, by virtue of a nice, handy, cushy provincial run, maybe that could be something that could act as a potential catalyst, because I'd say, obviously, the lads in Connacht and Ulster then will start kicking over cans in a big way.
Yeah, but Rory, even if you got Mikey, you go back to that Ulster point and saying, Ulster reluctantly probably don't want to change, and in fairness, the Ulster Championship deserves a lot of credit and what it brings to the table and has done. But I think if you look, apart from the couple of years with the Super 8s, traditionally, like the Ulster Championship, it was the team that came out with great momentum right after two or three tough games, and they came to Croke Park quarter-final and semi-final, and it was of huge benefit to them and stood to teams, were taken from when they started to win All-Irelands in the 90s. But now you come out as Ulster champions after 3 tough matches in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever the period is, and you possibly have 6 or 7 matches to win in All-Ireland. Like, it's the goalposts have moved radically. So I think eventually you're going to get to the point where teams will be kind of saying, well, I think it will eventually fall away because teams won't invest maybe the same enthusiasm and effort into it maybe as they have, and that will take maybe a couple of years, but we'll learn a lot from this year, but I think there will the groundwork will begin to move in Ulster a small bit, in my view.
Well, like Ciaran McKeever, the Armagh selector, was it last week? I think it was last week. He was saying like that, now I would personally put a health warning on this, but he was saying, that even for Armagh, Ulster wouldn't necessarily be a priority. I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing here, I won't be putting words in his mouth, and I know they're probably sensitive about this, but it was something along the lines of, it's not to be all and end all if we don't win Ulster. Now, I would say if I was Ciaran McKeever, I'd be saying that as well, given Armagh's recent record in the Ulster Championship and the fact that they're on the handy side of the draw. I'd be excited.
And how good Cavan looked on Saturday evening.
Cavan have been, long before last Saturday, Cavan have been sitting there waiting for Armagh. If Armagh get past Antrim, presumably they will next weekend. But and Armagh actually are a team in Ulster that could do with an Ulster title, but they're the first ones I've seen that have come out and kind of gone, nah, maybe it's not for us, But I totally agree with Ciaran. Like, the teams in Ulster that have serious designs in an All-Ireland will be looking at that and going, yeah, we'll see how we go, kind of thing, and we're not going to get too high up or low down. If we're Derry and we lose to, Tyrone, we're not going to get too high up or low down about it, and vice versa. We're going to, because we have other games and more fish to fry.
Okay, you've mentioned Derry, so we'll move on to Division 2 final. I like the fact that we're all just talking about championship. I think that's a natural way to react to league finals.
Mick, you haven't changed your tune on league finals anyway, Mick. That's for sure.
Waste of time.
He's in the Niall McCoy camp. So look, Dublin 4-6, Derry 11 points. Whelo, straight away, I don't mean to nitpick, but when was the last time Dublin scored 6 points in a competitive match in Croke Park? It's a slightly odd scoreline, if nothing else.
Probably back when I was playing. Actually, I think we played Cork, the two boys, in the league final in 1999.
I was there.
Probably only scored about 6 points.
That was 9-8, I think.
9-8.
Pouring rain below in the park.
Yeah. No, I think. Listen, like, yesterday's game was, from a Dublin perspective, there were positives and there were negatives. I think Desi Farrell maybe summed it up as the whole league campaign out of 6.5 out of 10 or something, and probably sums up maybe where Dublin we're at. Certainly the positives were, some of their counter-attacking play was excellent. Yes, they opened Derry up, but they countered very, very fast. They brought O'Callaghan into the game in the second half. He showed what he can do. He has that ability to get in behind defences. He has that ability to create goal chances. I thought when the game opened up and Derry had to push out a small bit, it suited Dublin and we saw the best of Dublin. But you would still be worried in that last third, that I think they kicked 11 wides, a lot of basic errors, and some of the shot options that there's and this is kind of a little bit consistent problem. And I suppose people talk about the defensive Dublin breaking down the defensive structure, and they're so attuned with it. I don't think they're attuned with it, because the personnel has changed a good bit. I think they've kind of struggled sometimes when they are up against that defensive and they're taking poor options. So I think overall, the fact they created so many goal chances, there was aspects of their play that were positive. But when you do look at the 4 goals, even, if you look at them coldly, the first one was Fenton going for a point.
And a square ball.
Menton breaker and a square ball. The second one was a penalty, probably was a hand on the back. The third one was Conor Glass class. And the fourth one, I think, Loch Hotel's gone for a point as well. But it was probably the other goal chances that they created were better ones. So yeah, like plenty to build on, plenty of improvement from a Dublin perspective. But I wouldn't get
no Chrissy McCaig, no
Chrissy McCaig, no McAvoy. Conor Glass was going off injured. Now, from a Derry perspective, I think it leaves question marks because Derry looked distinctly average at times yesterday. And again, you got to look at, they invested like a lot of energy into the league. And, I know Rory Gallagher was a bit blasé about it afterwards, saying, it was a game that didn't really matter much. But that was Rory Gallagher who played Ethan Doherty and Conor Glass against Limerick a week after the All-Ireland Club final. Of course he wanted to win that game.
Yeah.
Of course he wanted to win that.
Is there a danger of a Croke Park complex developing?
Well, it is worrying. Like, it is worrying because from a Derry perspective, because
they do look, they look more penetrable when they play in Croke Park, obviously, as all teams do.
Like, has the game plan reached the glass ceiling? Like, who knows? But definitely when the game opens up, they kind of look distinctly average. And okay, they were missing players, but up front, it's still McGuigan, Cassidy. Dublin tied down Ethan Doherty yesterday. You still wonder up front, are they still a little bit overaligned, that they don't have maybe the quality forwards that they need to play the type of game they're playing? And I think that's where their shortfalls going to come.
Mick, we'll get back to Derry in a minute. So Dublin scored 6 points. 4 goals. I think Whelo selling John Small's goal a little bit short there. I thought that was
a great goal. No,
it was
that was the best goal, Mikey.
Yeah. Lorcan O'Dell's drop shoulder and all, like, it was a lovely goal. So Dublin 6.5 out of 10, says Desi. Most of us not disagreeing with them. Kind of a funny old match against Derry, and yet they're probably, I don't know what the betting is. I don't look at these things. What are they, in top 2 or top 3 in the betting for the All Ireland?
Couldn't tell you. Don't know.
I bet they are though. Ironically, no pun intended. But like, we still don't know what the story is of Jack McCaffrey. He's a mystery, and it'll remain a mystery because that's how Dublin like things to be. But like, clearly they're better than they were last year, are they?
Maybe. It's. I was just listening to Ciaran there. It's not that I don't agree with a lot of what he said, but I'm just trying to think. What's the Dublin version of Yera? Is it? Yes. I don't know.
Is it a bit early?
I thought I would agree with a lot of what he's. I thought that are they any better? Maybe, yeah, they probably are. I mean, look at who they brought back. They are better. I think
Con makes them. Con O'Callaghan makes them.
Con is the one.
Makes them a different team.
You've got to alter, like Mannion back, Howard back, McCaffrey back.
Yeah.
They are game changers, and that's what gives you that hope. But I don't think
Killian O'Gara seems to be a find.
Yeah.
Lee Gannon's like developing more and more. Like, the young players who we were a little dismissive of last year are perhaps grown into themselves a bit.
I think, sorry, Mick, I was there yesterday. I had a great view on both ends from a Dublin perspective, and I think the Kula influence was massive for them. I thought Michael Fitzsimons was outstanding. Like, I mean, what age is that guy? Is he 34 maybe? He's certainly, he's there since 2011, I think, going all the ways back. And for a chap that I think at times may have even lost his place, or certainly wasn't first choice through the kind of peak years of the Jim Gavin era.
He stepped away for a year, didn't he?
Or maybe, yeah. I think he's got medical studies, and he's
33. He'll be 34 in 6 days, 9th of April. Happy birthday, Nick.
I just thought he was absolutely outstanding. And then Conor O'Callaghan, just the view I had, I was about 20 yards away from him. He's something else, lads. His ability his elusive ability, like once he gets the ball into his hands, it's you just don't know where he's going to go. He can turn so quickly, but it's just getting the ball into him. You've got to get the ball into him and if you get the ball into him, trouble now. I mean, I know he did he score? I don't think he got a score himself. But how much was he involved in, and how dangerous is he? And how now I know Chrissy McCaig wasn't playing, and arguably Chrissy picks him up, or does he? I don't know. Maybe he does.
Yeah, Conor McCluskey did well in them in the first half. It was the second half really when Derry kind of fell apart. Conor Glass went off, and they didn't have. That's that
a theme for Derry, though, isn't it?
All right, look, there's two things here. Like there's provincial football and there's Croke Park football, and the one thing they remind me a little bit of Donegal in 2011, that they've hit a point where, you know, if Derry were to win a second Ulster title in a row, they could say, "Oh, we've got that sort of box ticked now in terms of our development." The next thing now is Croke Park football, and I mean the one thing, you know, I mean I don't. You know, there's no wrong way to play Gaelic football, right? I don't particularly enjoy watching the way Derry play when they get bogged down, right? It's hard watching, and Dublin the same. It's hard, but the one thing that always strikes me, and when it comes to All Ireland, the end of All Ireland's, forwards still win it, and having that speed and directness and accuracy, that's what still wins All Ireland's and wins those big games at the tail end of the year, which is why something like Cillian O'Gara, I think, imagine like Cillian O'Gara with another month in him.
Bit of a wild card, all right.
Alongside Conor Callaghan, it gives Dublin something that they haven't had in a while, which is a lateral kind of direct option that they can use on the break rather than having to go back and forth and prize the whole thing out and get the perfect shot in front of the D. It just gives them another option. And in the same way, Derry are looking for things like that now. Like, so I don't think Derry have the squad that the ones above them would have, which is an issue. I think they will in time. I think they've got a couple of players who might be there now who are coming through as young lads. They have a terrific underage kind of well of talent there as well if they can develop them along. So it's an ongoing thing for Derry. They're not quite at that Croke Park football level yet. Yes, they will have been a huge learner for them. I don't care what anyone says. They're 2 weeks away from the Ulster Championship and they got torn apart the minute one of their key players went off. I can totally understand why Rory would be kind of, you know, look, we were missing A, B, and C, and they were missing A, B, and C. But guys have to respond and they have to react in chaos. Like, that's the big thing at the tail end of the year as well, is reacting in chaos, because that's what the big matches are a lot of the time. Come semi-finals and finals, chaos. So if you're so stuck to your structure, you have to learn the confidence and the self-belief and the seasoning to wear yourself through matches and figure out what's going on.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting you say that, though. Like, you stuck to your structure, and when you're in there, it's one of the things you do notice. So out of possession, like, I mean, look, the game hasn't changed in 150 years. You know, there's obviously two ways of playing, with the ball and without. But out of possession, when they're defending, obviously they put everybody inside around 45, and they're effectively defending with 15, and then they attack with 15. But something that I noticed was, when they went on the attack, obviously they're pushing bodies into the opponent's half of the field. But some of the forwards that drift into that full forward line, that sort of hug the square, they literally jog in with their backs to the ball. Now, the ball at certain points is up to the it's in the opponent's half of the field. Like, it was in the Dublin half of the field. Rogers was on the ball inside, and there was still Derry lads sort of trotting in with their backs to the ball. It's just, I don't know, it was just very formulaic, and there's a kind of a straitjacket approach to it. And I'm going, there's no way that's going to win All Ireland's. Like, there's just no way.
It's just a lack of, it's that, again, I go back to that Stardust thing. It's just a lack of having a con that you can just drive the ball and he'll do something with it, or he'll create something, you know? I mean, I think, and I'm not going to pretend that I've been poring over Derry videos to say this is what they do precisely, but my sense of watching them is they like to play they like to get loads of men up the field close to goal, but it's not because they're trying to score goals, it's because they're trying to create create a block of space about 40 yards from the goal where they can shoot from, 30 yards from the goal where they can shoot from. That's fine, but it just needs to evolve, and I'm not sure they have quite got the competition in the team yet and the options to get it there. They'll be far better in another month, like, don't get me wrong. They'll be far better, and it's unlikely that they could have conceded 8 goals yesterday. Yeah. It was unbelievable. But the same way Ciaran made the point there a little bit, it's still weird to watch Dublin missing so many chances. The ones that they would have just tapped over a few years ago. And I know it's not fair to compare teams, but it's still a bit of a head wrecker when they create these chances and you see it looks like a relatively handy one going wide. And they're the ones that Dublin would have built leads on and built handy wins on back to years.
The injury to Conor Glass is interesting. Obviously, it's bad news for Derry, but it also does. It was mentioned, it was going around last night that they might be bringing Ciaran McFall back in. It'll be interesting to get Rory Gallagher's take on this, because obviously his return home was delayed by a court case in Boston. He had faced charges of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon causing serious bodily harm relating to an incident outside a pub on 20th of June. He wasn't found innocent. Obviously, US law is a little different. Going by a report in the Irish News. At a hearing of the South Boston Division of Boston Municipal Court on Wednesday, the case ended with a continued without a finding result. This is a form of dismissal which in Massachusetts law occurs when a defendant acknowledges they committed an offence, but they are not found guilty. Now, from reading the reports on this, Whelo, it was not a pleasant incident. He left someone with some serious internal injuries. He's clearly a tremendous footballer, but he can't come back in and, the question not be put to Rory Gallagher that he's comfortable. Like, what's your view on this? It's quite an unusual situation. It's not something we see very often.
I think, Mikey, it's a tricky one because you don't know the circumstances of the incident. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, something happened, involved in some sort of scrape over there. I'd say the chap is just probably delighted to be home, to be honest, and delighted that it's put behind him. And I think, Rory Gallagher will have to deal with that, but he probably sees him from a footballing perspective, and we saw how effective he was in the club championship when he was last here and with Derry, and he will be a huge added bonus to them. So, listen, from his perspective, he's just got to put that behind him and move on. I'm sure, listen, it's an incident that he's going to regret, but he's home now, and Rory Gallagher's just going to have to take that on board. He's going to have to really deal with that one, because we don't really know the circumstances exactly what happened.
Do you know what's interesting about it though is, given Mick's piece yesterday, which is really interesting, really good piece in the paper yesterday, Mick, on Cluxton, is given the sort of circus that accompanied Cluxton's reintegration into the Dublin team, this won't be met with anywhere near the same of, is it good for the panel or is it bad for the panel? And he hasn't put in all the hard yards and all of that type of stuff. And he'll just, I don't know. I just think I suppose it's more the profile of the Dublin team and everything that goes with that is just.
Yeah. Well, do you think of any precedent here, Mick?
Any precedent in terms of
McFall, kind of somebody coming back in after a court case like this, or mid-season as well?
Off the top of my head, and at the risk of libeling anybody, no, I can't.
You won't libel anyone then.
Well, anyway, I can't think of anybody. Well, I could if I mentioned somebody who wasn't coming off the back of a court case, but I can't think of. I just can't think of a relevant. I think just in relation to Ciaran McFall, like, he wasn't on the panel last year. He didn't have him on the panel. And when the question might have been asked, why wasn't he there? It was, well, has he quite bought into the Derry ethic as Rory has laid it out? So, I mean, putting aside the circumstances of his return, I'm sure Rory's response to that will be, look, that's an ongoing personal matter for him. And, he'll take care of that in his own good time. And if he wants to come and play football, he can come and play football. No more than he can go and play golf in his spare time when he's at home or whatever he wants to do. But in terms of him going into the Derry squad, I would imagine that going in the way things are, that Rory may well have him kind of where he wants him now, in terms of this is the job I need you for, etc., and this is how it's going to be. I don't want to say my way or the highway, but that basically this is how it is now, and he's a very, I mean, if mentally he can get into the right place and everything is okay, he's a very good footballer. And I talk about variety, like he could potentially bring something to Derry that could be very useful to them during the summer,
Yeah, absolutely. Wait and see. So Division 3 final, all Ulster affair, Cavan v Fermanagh. So after the phony war last week, where Fermanagh gained their promotion, Cavan won this. And Rory, I was texting you during it because I threatened for a little while to bring my 3 small children to Croke Park until I looked at the weather, so I was watching them at home. This was pretty dour, I'd say, until the last quarter, when kind of Cavan opened up a bit, and maybe Fermanagh retiring or like the conditions were awful, but when Cavan had to kind of put the foot down, they put the foot down, and they looked very, very tidy.
They're a good side. They have a very, very good spine to the team. Faulkner, McVeety. You have to bear in mind as well, I mean, arguably, one of their best players decided to go to Australia in Thomas Galligan, and like massive losses in All-Star as well from a couple of years ago. They've got Paddy Lynch up front, like right through the middle of the team, very well coached. Yeah, I could see Cavan. Cavan are going to have a say in that Ulster Championship if everybody else decides to take a bye ball on it. They'll certainly go and want to try and win it,
So you're saying if everybody else gives up, they have a shot. Is that what you're saying?
So you're saying
default.
So you're saying there's a chance. So I think it was a tough night. It lashed rain. All the games, certainly in Dublin anyway, got pulled across the whole weekend. It didn't stop raining for 2 days solid. So that would have made conditions extremely tough. I was expecting a lot more goals. We did see a lot. We did see quite a lot of goal mode action. Again, goalkeepers to the fore for
Sean
both
McNally
teams.
was amazing.
It was unbelievable. And he's a young lad as well, and only still learning his trade. So I don't think it was as bad given the conditions as some people made out. But I think Cavan were good value for their win, and I think they're in a good shape now heading into Ulster.
Yeah, this is the problem, I suppose, with say the Leinster Championship and maybe Munster. You look at the kind of the tier 2 teams of them and you say, oh geez, yeah, they're also rans. Like Cavan and Fermanagh are, 2 Division 3 teams this year who are in the Ulster Championship, and you look at that game and say, they could be they're not a match for anybody, but they're certainly, even Fermanagh are a handful for any team, and have a lot of good to say about them.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair point, Mikey. You kind of, when you compare it to the Leinster Championship, well, certainly both these teams will be very competitive in the Ulster Championship, including Fermanagh. They won 5 in a bounce, and they probably didn't utilise the possession they had in the first half. I thought when Cavan were kind of a little bit off it, and I thought Cavan just changed their approach at half time. They went man to man. They pushed really high up on Fermanagh. They squeezed them in the middle of the third. They cut off any supply that they had. As Rory said, Darren McAbeety, Ciaran Brady, Porritt Faulkner. I thought they were brilliant in the middle third. And they have a bit of quality up front with the likes of Oisin Brady and Paddy Lynch, and then even Gareth McKiernan got a great score, even though it wasn't his one, was more prominent games. But I think what impressed me most about Cavan was they never, after 60 minutes, there was 1 point in it. And then there were a couple of points coming into the 70th minute. They never sat back. They never sat back and held out for the win and tried to and invite Fermanagh onto them. They kept pushing and they kept pushing and they kept pushing high. And that's why I think they won the game by 5-6 points. So they're very well organised. And that game against Armagh, it's a very interesting one, you know what I mean? Because I think you kind of forget from a Cavan perspective is that the Ulster Championship is probably more important to them because they want to try and qualify for the All-Ireland. So, they're going to be certainly going hammer and tongs at that. So, but Fermanagh will be extremely competitive when in the Ulster Championship as well. They've had a brilliant league, and they can take a hell of a lot from their league campaign.
It's a risky game for Derry, that match. It's
absolutely.
a risky enough match for Derry now. You'd still fancy Derry to get. Yeah.
It's a little bit like Clare drawing Kerry in Munster, kind of a lot, Fermanagh getting Derry. It's just unfortunate. It's like if they had got, if they'd got it maybe
Donegal
or Armagh or something like that, you go, that'd be an interesting match. No, they'll give Derry plenty of it, but you kind of feel they'll probably get through. I wouldn't entirely rule out Antrim giving Armagh a fright next weekend, by the way. Yeah. They're playing Saturday evening, and Antrim have shown they hadn't won a lot of games, but when they've shown a bit of gumption, a bit of resilience here and there in matches when they needed to pull stuff out. So I'd say they'll give them a fair old run before Armagh have to deal with Cavan,
Yeah. So look, it was an instructive game, I think, and played out in awful conditions, as was the Division 4 final, as I said. Which, if Met Aaron had lied to me and told me that it was going to be sunny for 2 hours, I would have brought 3 small children to, and they would have drowned because
it was probably the best game of the weekend. In a lot
it
of ways.
It was very entertaining. it had a lot to it had a lot about it, all right. Wicklow came out of the traps very quickly, and then Sligo just kind of reeled them in. Whelo and Sligo, we've been saying it here for a few weeks. It's obvious they're 3 years down the line. Tony McEntee, like they've kind of, the team has developed, and you can see it. And say it again and again. Sean Carabine's a hell of a footballer. Pat Spillane put on the show for his dad. He got a lovely point, and Niall Murphy scored 1-4. So like they've a decent forward line in particular.
They do. They're further down the development probably than Wicklow. And I suppose the turning point, Wicklow 7-2 up, like and a man up, and they conceded 1-1 then in that period. And
the goal, Whelo, did he throw that? Is that a throw? I mean,
Niall Murphy goal.
Yeah.
I think nine times out of 10, Rory,
it's just I know.
I hate those goals, Rory, with a passion.
I know, and technically,
I don't think you can argue that it's a throw, but I think that was the key turning point, and I think so. Then Sligo had a great third quarter. Then I think they pushed on. They 1-4. I think without response, and like they just had better forwards in Carabine and Murphy and Spillane. And like they're going to fancy themselves they're certainly looking at Connacht final, like, you know what I mean, no doubt about it. And like this could turn out to be, they could be not the underdog of the year, but could be a story of the year, because they're going to get to the fair chance. Like obviously Leitrim and obviously New York and London will have their own say, but whoever comes through that side of the draw, is going to be the big underdogs going in with the big dogs. And so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Where do you stand on this one, Mick? Because Sligo could be the big story of the year by going into, a 3-team group in Sam Maguire and performing admirably, or they could win the Charlton Cup if Cavan win Ulster, because Cavan are obviously the team everyone's looking at as the Charlton Cup favourites, as they were last year. But like, it's not that any team's going to throw a match or anything, but like, if there's a fork in the road here for a couple of counties kind of on the bubble. Like, do you want the Charlton Cup and to build a team? I'd say if you asked Oisin McConville, obviously the Sam Maguire is not a realistic aim for him, but like, he might be thinking, this is a team I don't know very well, they're young, they're building, Charlton Cup's better. If we were by some freak to end up in an Leinster semi-final and a chance of making an Leinster final and then Sam Maguire, would that be good for us?
This is Wicklow now you're talking about?
Yeah, well, I'm just using them hypothetically because they're the other team in this match.
Yeah,
very hypothetically.
Enough. Yeah, fair enough. I think sometimes when you're on the outside, sometimes you overthink these things a little bit. I think we're all guilty of it. I think when you're in there, you just want to win games. You just want to win games. I suppose overthinking is what makes podcasts, really. If you didn't overthink things, you'd have nothing to talk about. I think sometimes you
or would we?
I don't know. I think sometimes you just got to go and win your games and see where it takes you. I mean, losing matches doesn't do anybody any good at any stage of a season. So I think they'll just figure it out. I don't think there'll be any great grand master plan. I'd say they'll just go and look at, of course, at the back of a manager's mind, you're probably thinking, well, if we were, we'd obviously have a better chance of winning the Tailteann Cup, like if we were in there rather than, as you say, going into a Leinster final, let's say, and getting hockeyed by Dublin and then going into a group and getting hockeyed again 3 times. But then again, like, imagine the buzz. Let's just say if it was Wicklow, imagine the buzz around Wicklow if you're in a 14 group with whoever, like, I don't know, Kerry or coming to Ockram or whatever it be. Like, there's a lot to be said for that too. So I don't know. It's a hard one, and it's so different for every specific county. It depends where you are. Like Sligo, like that. No, Sligo will be gunning for a Connacht final. I mean, they've been competitive at times down the years at that end of things. So they won't be holding back anyway. And that level of a team, whereas say Wicklow mightn't have that issue to deal with because they're not at that stage of their development yet.
Yeah. So it was a good game. So we look forward to Wicklow out next week at the weekend, as are many teams. So here this is the bit we'll drag out now in a few months, lads. After seeing all of the league, Whelo, who's going to win the All Ireland?
Oh, I wasn't ready for that one, Mikey.
They're the best ones.
They're
the best ones.
Thinking about this one, and I suppose my heart still thinks Dublin have the capability for one more push if they get everyone on the field. I think if they get McCaffrey back and Howard back fit and Mannion back, and they keep everyone and stay injury free, I think Dublin, there's one more potential push in them to be thereabouts. But my head says, you know, an up and coming team is going to maybe stand up and maybe get over the line. That could be Mayo, but I still think Galway for me are a team that have a chance to go that step further, and that's forgetting about Kerry in the long grass. But so I put my head in a part of it and say Galway would get over the line.
I think that's the Dublin era there, Mick. He said lots of good things about Dublin, and then said Galway going to win the All-Ireland.
Well, when you hear anyone from Dublin saying Kerry are in the long grass, you know where you're going with that. They're too tall to be in the long grass.
Mick, is this such an open All-Ireland that Kerry are your default?
No, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. You'd have to tune in on Sunday to find out. I know. I don't know. I genuinely, even coming out of yesterday, I mean, league finals, as I say, I'm a league final skeptic. They mean nothing. So, like, you can take bits and pieces from them, but they're not really telling you anything that you didn't already know most of the time. So, I genuinely don't know. I mean, it's for me, the top four are Dublin, Kerry, Galway, Mayo, and you can pick the teeth out of that or pick the bones out of that. Like, I mean, it's if I
give me a name, Foley.
Pressure's on, Mick.
He's frozen. He's frozen. There's so much pressure on him.
That was it. Ideal opportunity.
He didn't have to switch off his Wi-Fi.
He did. He just pulled the plug on his router. My God. We'll wait for Mick to go back. Rory, who's going to win the All-Ireland?
Yeah, like, I don't know. Same as Mick. I genuinely don't know. I think that's the honest answer. And yeah, the four teams, which I think is quite instructive, actually, to a certain extent. There's a lot of talking up of Ulster this and Ulster that. Yet when we break down the top four teams, there's an Ulster team in sight. And Kerry, Galway, Dublin, Mayo, it'll be one of them. But I would nearly go to my default setting in a wide open championship and say that given the path that Kerry will find themselves in, I wouldn't be surprised to see them back in another All-Ireland final. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Dublin in there with them. But I genuinely do not know.
So you're saying Kerry. Okay, I'm going to say Mayo. I've switched from Galway. Galway were my team last year, and they nearly delivered. Nearly made me look like a genius.
I can't believe Mick Foley has just opted out. You know, sitting on the fence there now.
Well, he was accusing you. He was accusing.
Oh yeah, he was accusing me. Yeah.
Okay, so for everybody listening and watching, Mick Foley is a coward. He hasn't rejoined the meeting. I'd let him back in if he rejoined. I'd give him a chance. He's going to tell us his Wi-Fi is down. His internet's gone. He lives in rural Cork. It's not his fault, but we all know he's nothing but a coward. He's not really. He's a lovely man, Mick, and we'll make him send us a postcard with his prediction on it, and we'll get it off him. So thank you, Whelo. Thank you, Rory, and even thank you to Mick, who's fled. We'll be back Thursday to look ahead to the football championship and to the Division 1 league final, which means nothing, as Mick Foley just said. Anyway, he's gone now. He doesn't count. Okay, we'll be back on Thursday. We'll chat to you then. Good luck. Thank you. Goodbye.
We earned it by winning the last two matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it! It's over the bar!